Hey everyone, welcome to Aspire to Lead, and I am your host, Joshua Stamper. Super excited about the conversation for this week with the amazing author and motivational speaker, Kim Strobel, is joining us this week to discuss her new book with DBC, Small Steps to Big Joy. We're also going to be diving into happiness research and the science behind that. We're going to talk about teacher well-being and then also some wonderful happiness habits. But before we jump into this conversation, I quickly wanted to share with you that we've got a free webinar coming up April 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time with my co-author, Charlie Peck. So if you saw the episode last week or some of the posts on social media announcing the book, we're going to be collaborating in this event called Behavior Prevention Strategies for Educators. So you're going to get some tools and tips, resources. We're going to give some giveaways for this Behavior Prevention Strategy webinar. You can find the link to sign up in the show notes or on joshstamper.com. We've only got a few seats left. We're going to try and make it a pretty intimate setting for about 50 or 60 folks, and we only have a few seats left. So jump into the show notes and click on that link and get your free registration set up. Now, here is the interview with the wonderful and amazing Kim Strobel. Welcome back, everyone, to Aspire to Lead, where we will be discussing the visions, inspirations, and experiences from top educational leaders. My name is Joshua Stamper, and you can connect with me on Twitter or on Instagram at Joshua_Stamper. All right, Aspire leaders and Teach Better family. I have a phenomenal guest. I'm so excited to speak with her. Thank you so much for joining this week, as I know this time is valuable for you as, you know, the weekend's going on. You got a lot of things going on in your life, especially for our current leaders. The spring is insane, but I know that this conversation is going to be very valuable for you because Kim is a renowned motivational speaker. She's traveling all over the world, working with educators nonstop. And we're going to be really diving into happiness, the research, why it fuels success, teacher well-being, and of course, some habits for you also. But before we do that, I would love for you, Kim, to share just a little bit about yourself and your educational leadership journey.
Yeah, thank you, Joshua. It's nice to be here. Well, I'm a former fourth grade teacher. And I have to tell you, when I finally reached that goal, it was really, really just a huge milestone for me. I started college and quit after a year. I had suffered from a debilitating anxiety disorder called panic disorder, which is actually a really big part of where I am today. And it's the very thing that probably got me to doing this work. But at the time, it was just a very debilitating suffering in my life. And so I had to quit college because I was fearful to be away from home. So eventually the teaching call was so strong in me that I summoned the courage to go back to school. But at that time I was married and I had a full-time job. And so for 3 years, I had a boss who allowed me to get up at 4 a.m. and go into the office and work till noon. And then I would get in my car, drive 90 minutes to the University of Southern Indiana. And then I did classes until around 11 p.m. at night. I did that for 3 years. I thought I was going to lose my mind. For me to finally acquire my teaching degree and eventually get a classroom, it was just something that I was so grateful for because I had worked so hard to get there. It wasn't an easy path for me. I was a fourth grade teacher for most of the time, spent some time in second grade. And then from there, I was a literacy coach and coordinator. I eventually became a curriculum director. And then I just had this super intuitive calling, sense, whisper, whatever it was. And I launched my own business in 2016. And my husband, who is like super supportive of everything I do, it panicked him. He's like, oh my goodness, you're going to give up your curriculum director's job and a steady paycheck. And where are you going to get people to hire you? And I just kept saying, hun, I just know that this is the work I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to transition from empowering students to really empowering educators. And so I've been doing this since 2016. And I know not everybody loves to hear this probably, but I wake up every day excited to do this job.
Well, what a profound story to go from being in college and having that, like you said, debilitating thing that, you know, you don't want to leave the house to now you're on the stage and you're working with thousands of educators around this country. And I want to talk about the topic and the thing that you're passionate about. And obviously you're passionate about because you got a brand new book out, which is Teach Happy, Small Steps to Big Joy. And I want to hear kind of, you know, why you wanted to move into this area, this subject matter, to speak to educators specifically.
Yeah, well, I think, for me, I I've kind of suffered most of my life with panic disorder. There were times I was able to get it under control. And I tell this story from the stage because many times the number one keynote I get asked to do is the science of happiness. And, sometimes when I get introduced as a happiness coach, I feel like I walk out from behind the curtain and 80% of the people probably hate me already, right? Like, okay, who's this going to come up here and tell us to shift our mind to positive and be happy? But I tell people that that's toxic positivity and that's not what I'm about. And so I actually share my story of many, many years of struggling to do the simplest of things, such as leave my house and drive 5 minutes to work, or going to Walmart, just driving there and then having to go in the store. It was like every single thing was really hard for me. And I really did have a mental health crisis because I tell people that every 15 minutes of every day was a fight for me. And there was a time that I really did want to give up, only because I needed some relief. And so I think that I always laugh, right? Like, how does the girl who struggled to drive her car to Walmart step on a stage now with 6,000 people? Like, what's the crazy in that? But because of that journey, when I hit rock bottom, I finally went to my doctor, and he explained that I had a chemical imbalance. I had this thing called panic disorder, because for years I didn't know what it was. I just thought I was inadequate and crazy and not functioning normally as an adult. And then he got me in therapy, got me on medicine. And about that time, I think the self-help field started to get in people's hands. And for me, it just completely lifted me out of the darkness, because I started to see that I could take responsibility for my life, regardless of the circumstances that I was in at times. And I started to kind of rebuild my life using those techniques. And so then, as an educator and now as a keynote speaker, I have so many people who come to me after a speaking event, and truly, Joshua, they're in tears. They love what they're called to do. They love students. They want to show up for them day in and day out. But they also say, I am so overwhelmed. I'm not sleeping at night. I drive home from school crying. I'm short tempered with my own children at home because I have nothing left. And I don't even know how to get control of my life again. And so for me, I know a lot about the science of happiness and the research and the things that we can do to take our power back in a profession that seems to demand too much at times.
Oh my goodness, yes. And there's an outpouring right now, especially on social media, and folks that are contacting myself, the Teacher team, in regards to this topic. So I think this is so timely right now in the spring here. And so you had touched on just a little bit about the science behind happiness and the research that you've done. So I would love to kind of go with that as far as our baseline, just with our conversation, because I'll be honest, I know obviously happiness is important, but I would love to hear just kind of the research that you've uncovered and the science behind it as to why it's so important.
Yeah, so a lot of what I've learned has been from Sonia Luber-Miski and Sean Acor.
Mm-hmm.
And what we know is that we all have what's called a set baseline happiness level. So maybe my set baseline is here, and Joshua, maybe yours is a little bit higher. And what this means is that maybe good things happen to you and I. We get a new job, or, we get a promotion, we lose some weight, we go on vacation, whatever it is, something good happens in our life, and our happiness level goes up for a period of time. And then it goes back to its baseline. It might take 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 hours, but it's always going to go back to your baseline. What's just as interesting is the research has proven that as human beings, we can endure really hard things, trauma, loss, illness, and our happiness levels will dip. But for most human beings, we have the ability to reset back to baseline. And so then many people say, okay, Kim, but why is Joshua's baseline higher than yours? Like, what does that encompass? And so I want you to picture a pie chart. And what we know is that 50% of your long-term happiness is genetic. It comes from your mom, your dad, or a mixture of both. And when I say this, Joshua, the whole crowd 80% of them hang their heads. They're like, oh, yes, this explains a lot. Um, but it's true. We have a genetic disposition to how our brain sees the world. And I always give the example of, like, I have a super loving, caring, nurturing mother, but her brain can pick out every single thing that's going wrong, every single worry, every single concern. And then my dad is just kind of like this happy go lucky. His brain just isn't, it doesn't scan for anything that's wrong. It scans for everything that's right. And so some people are like, oh my gosh, 50%. I'm like, no, stay with me here. And I don't know how you feel about the 50%. Is that shocking to you, Joshua?
No, not at all. I just because I feel like as I get older, the more comparisons I can feel with my parents, as much as I hate to say that, but we are we're from that lineage, so it only makes sense. So I
Yeah.
love the baseline of happiness. I think that's wonderful information. I want to know, how does happiness fuel our success as educators?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get to that, but I have to tell you the rest of the pie chart
Oh, please.
because this is really shocking. So 50% is genetic. What we know is that only 10% of your long term happiness, Joshua, comes from your external circumstances.
Oh, wow.
So we can take everything from the home you grew up in
Hmm.
to the income levels of your family to your education. If your mom and dad were married, single, divorced, or widowed, if you're married, single, divorced, or widowed, if you have kids, if you don't have kids, we can take everything and throw it together. And that still only contributes up to 10% of a person's long term happiness, which is shocking because if you're like Kim Strobel, you let experiences, things, and people still weigh more than 10% at times.
Yeah, that seems smaller than what I anticipated. I just assumed it would probably be the other 50%.
Yeah. And I have to ask you, Joshua, are you a dad?
Oh yeah, I have 6 kids.
What? 6? Oh my gosh, you're going to really laugh at this one. So the research says, and let me tell you, I have a son, Spencer, and he's been the biggest blessing and joy of my life. But the happiness research says that when you become a mom or a dad, you become just a little less happy for the rest of your life. And it's only because of all the stress and the
Yeah.
worry, right? It's like it takes a lot of energy to raise these wonderful, beautiful beings. And so that always gets a really good laugh from the crowd too. And many of them are like, yes, thank you for validating me, right? So we
I've
have to have a
concurred and
sense of
seen.
humor. We have to have a sense of humor. So Joshua has it times 6.
Thankfully, I was blessed with a lot of energy growing up. So yeah.
Oh, very good, very good. So if 50% is genetic and 10% is our external circumstances, the part that gets me so fired up is the last 40%. And what we know is that every human being has the ability to increase their happiness levels by up to 40%. And it has to do with these three things: the thoughts you're thinking on a daily basis, the behaviors and your actions. Thoughts, behaviors, and actions. And those are the three things that help us increase our happiness levels by up to 40%, which leads exactly to your next question, which is, why does that fuel success, Kim? Why is that important? And I feel like even 10 years ago, happiness was kind of a frivolous word. It wasn't something that was taken seriously. But we've all been kind of schooled that the formula for happiness is this: go to school, work really hard, get a diploma, get a good GPA so you can get into the good college. And when you get into the good college, you're now competing with so many more people. So we need you to put your head to the grindstone. We need you to have that GPA. We need you to land the best internship so you can get the good job. Because once you get the good job, you can make the good money. And once you make the good money, you can get the nice car and the nice home and the 2.5 kids. And when you've attained all of these things, that's when you're finally going to get to happiness. And even though we know that is not true, it is deeply ingrained in us that that is the path that leads to happiness. And what the last 20 years of positive psychology research has shown is that that formula is actually completely backwards. It's actually when we put your happiness at the forefront of your life that then we are able to move the needle in every other area of your life. And the reason this is important for schools is when we can teach happiness habits to employees, what happens is we start to shift a lot of things. Like, for example, a brain at positive is 31% more productive than a brain that's at negative, neutral, or stressed. 31%. Can you imagine, Joshua, being 31% more productive in a day's time?
I'll take that on any single day. That would be amazing.
Yeah, right. So not only are you 31% more productive when you're at positive more than negative, neutral, or stressed, but the research shows that employees are 10 times more engaged in their job.
Hmm.
They are 3 times more creative, which means that when our brain is at stressed, certain parts of our brain are literally shut down and they're inaccessible to us, which is why we can't think straight. We don't see solutions to problems. We can't come up with creative ways to solve things. But when our brain is more at positive, all of a sudden we start to see opportunities that were there the whole time that we didn't know were there. And so 3 times more positive, 23% less stressed, 10 times more engaged, and 31% more productive, which is why we're starting to see that well-being is not something that's just talked about, that it's actually an initiative. And I know that your work with schools, like you said, the Teach Better team has seen an outpouring for needing this support and help.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. You can find out more at teachbetter.com/podcasts. Now let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, teacher well-being right now is a huge topic. And I mean, for obvious reasons, like you just said, the data, I mean, if people are stressed, you're going to see the opposite of everything that you just stated. So you talked about real quickly about happiness habits. And I really would love to dive into that because I know there's probably leaders, administrators that are listening right now, just chomping at the bit of, okay, Kim, please help us share some tactics for our teachers to improve their well-being.
Absolutely. And in my book, which I know we're going to talk about a little bit later, but basically that's what it is. It's like, okay, here are the things that we know that teachers can do to move the needle. But it's, many times it's like, oh my gosh, like this is one more thing that I have to incorporate. This is one more thing that I have to be doing. But the whole premises of the book is small little steps to big joy. We pick one little happiness habit, a 2-minute practice, in which I'll teach you in a minute, a 2-minute practice, and we stick with that until we start to see some momentum. And then maybe later, now we can go back and we can add one more habit to make a difference in our life because we see that it's working. And so I'm going to give you, let's see, in the book, I can't remember how many habits we have, but I'm going to give you the top 5, but I'm going to go in depth with one of them if that's okay. Because I can talk about this all day long, Joshua.
Well, I'm not going to stop you, Kim, but yes, please share the top 5. That would be awesome.
Okay, so the top 5 are a gratitude practice, a daily gratitude practice, physical movement, moving your body 30 minutes a day. 30 minutes a day. I don't know if you've read the book Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia, but it's a phenomenal book about how do we live fully and live well, even as we age. And the number one thing he talks about is physical exercise because it literally changes the mitochondria in your cells. So move your body 30 minutes a day, daily practice of gratitude, random acts of kindness, saying thank you to the Walmart lady because she bagged your stuff up quickly and got you out of there, smiling at someone, sending a nice email or a nice text. These little tiny things have a ripple effect in our life and in our brain. The practice of meditation. The last one is social connections, relationships with our peers, our friends, our family, and making those a priority in our life.
All right. You said you were going to expand on one. So I'm curious of the top 5, which one you want to dive into.
Yeah. So it's gratitude. And I know that we've all heard it. And I always say, Oprah preached it to me for 15 years. And I guess I'm somebody who has to really know the why behind it. So I want to tell you why it works and then how to use it in your life. It's literally a 2-minute daily practice. And Joshua, I used to run a very high-end women's coaching program. And I had all this video content and all of these activities. And at the end, I did an evaluation. And more times than not, I would say, what is the one thing that I taught you that completely changed your life? And it was the 2-minute daily gratitude practice. So first, I want to tell you why it works. What we know is that as humans, we have around 70,000 thoughts a day. It's crazy. And what we know is that 80% of the average human's thoughts in a day's time are negative, which means when you and I put our head on the pillow at night, most of us have had 56,000 negative thoughts. Now, there's a reason for this. It goes all the way back to archaic times, to caveman, cavewoman times, when we had this little thing in our brain called the amygdala, which we still have today. And the amygdala scans for danger and it scans for threats 24/7. Because back then, if the brain wasn't constantly looking for, was it going to be attacked by a saber-toothed tiger? Would it have warmth and shelter? Did it have a water source? If it didn't do that, we would not have been kept safe. The issue is it's 2024 and we still have an amygdala and it's still trained to look for threats. So we can have some compassion for ourselves and understanding that this is why. Now, what's really interesting, and some of you might be saying, how do I have 70,000 thoughts a day? I'm not even aware of them. Well, that's because most of them are on repeat in your subconscious mind, and they're firing so fast that it's not like you have an awareness of them. And in fact, 80% of the negative thoughts that you have, 95% of the 80 are the exact same thoughts you had the day before.
So Kim, is there a way to train your brain in regards to the subconscious? Because it seems like it's kind of on autopilot.
Yeah, exactly. And so the way we get at those subconscious layers, much of what goes on in our subconscious layers is the beliefs that we hold about ourselves. And so our conscious is our thinking and awareness brain.
Mm-hmm.
And our subconscious is like the dark recess part of our brain that we're kind of unaware of. But what's interesting is if you picture an iceberg and the very tip of the iceberg is out of the water, what we know is that about 5% of how we show up and operate in all areas of our life, only 5% comes from our conscious brain. 95% comes from our subconscious. And in that subconscious is where we hold our values and the beliefs that we have about ourselves. And most of our beliefs were formed between the ages of 0 and 6. And yeah, it's crazy, right? So what we have to do is we have to extract those old beliefs, those negative thoughts, and we have to download new, and we can do that through repetition. So the research calls and says, look, if I can get you to write down 3 different things that you are thankful for every single day, what happens is I begin to create a new neural feedback loop in your brain. So the brain has thousands and thousands of roadways, and whichever roadway you go down the most is the one that's going to be even easier tomorrow. So let's say that, and we're humans, right? So we gripe about our job. So let's say that we're griping and griping and griping about our job. And let's say on average, 2,000 thoughts are dedicated a day to feeling bad about my job. Well, tomorrow that's going to be 2001. And the next day it's going to be 2005 because that road is getting deeper and deeper. So what we can do is when we begin to write them down, and by the way, when you write them down, that's getting to the level of subconsciousness. Okay. So I always tell people it's fine to say it, to do gratitude around your dinner table. But when you write it down, you're taking it to a deeper level. And so when we write down 3 things every single day, what happens is our brain starts to get triggered. And all of a sudden it starts to notice things it wasn't paying attention to before. It starts to notice just little tiny positive things, which then kind of creates this new neural feedback loop. And you're starting to see more and more of that. Now, I have one rule that you have to follow when you're doing your gratitude, because it does make all the difference. So I just get a journal and I always write the date. And then I write the words, I am thankful, ... Because what we know is that the words I am are 2 of the most powerful words that we have. They actually carry an energetic vibration because the I am is now embodying that belief. And then I tell people, be specific. Don't say, I am thankful for my body. Say, I am thankful for a body that allows me to run, for me, allows me to run 40 miles a week. Don't say I'm thankful for my family. Be specific. I'm thankful that on Thursday nights we go out to eat for pizza with my mom and dad. And so just be specific, but it really is like a 2 to 5 minute daily practice that really does shift that lever. And I'm going to give you a link, Joshua, that your people can download, because we created what's called a gratitude prompt
Okay.
and tracker. And so it gives you 5 prompts just to get you starting to look for areas, because it's a little hard at first. I mean, you would think you have a lot to be thankful for, but when we're trying to come up with different things every day, our brains maybe not used to that. So it gives 5 prompts, and then you can just use a notebook, but we do give you a tracker. And then I tell people, I did this with my 4th grade students. We started every day out with 90 seconds of gratitude, and we just one after another, pop, 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 pop. After two or 3 minutes, we had 27 gratitudes. And then at the end of the day, they pulled their gratitude notebooks out and they wrote 3 things they were thankful for.
Awesome. Well, so for anyone that's listening, if you're interested in those 5 prompts, we'll make sure we have the link on the website, joshstamper.com, also in the show notes on YouTube, and then also with the podcast players. So excited about that resource, Kim. And then I want to touch on and say congratulations on your brand new book, which is just released. So we talked about it a little bit, Teach Happy. So small steps to big joy. And I would love to know why you wrote this book, why it was in your heart to put this resource out into the world, but then also who would it benefit in regards to the audience?
Yeah, so I think that this book is mostly for teachers and leaders. I say it's a book that anybody could pick up because it's about happiness habits, but I've really written it from I've given a lot of teacher examples because obviously that's the profession that's close to my heart. I think, and I have to tell you, Joshua, I had this dream for 10 years. Talk about somebody who just didn't believe in herself enough to bring it to fruition. I've been writing this book for 10 years. I'd write a few chapters and then be like, no, I'm not a writer. I can't do this. This has been a 10-year, I don't know, things shifted. And I guess I finally started to believe in myself. But anyway, I'm somebody who has always interviewed students. And one of the questions I would always ask people is I would say, who was your favorite teacher in school? But that wasn't the important question. The second question was, can you tell me why? Why was, Mrs. Treader your very favorite teacher? What was it about her? And I started to collect the answers. And there were 2 themes, 2 answers, versions of an answer that I always got. One was, I know that my teacher cares about me. She cares about me. And then the other one kind of surprised me, Joshua. My teacher's happy. She likes to be there. We can tell she likes it. And so, I don't do fluff, and I'll be the first to tell you, I do think the education system is completely out of control. I think that there are far too many demands, expectations that I always say, I have a lot to say to the people in Washington, D.C. about how I think kids learn and how teachers need to be treated, but they haven't called me yet to do a keynote.
Hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon. And so for me, I always say that we can stay in victim mode or we can step into warrior mode. And so I always say, I don't know that we can ever change the system. I'd like to think I could influence those. I don't know. I don't know that we can change the system. But the only thing that I have power over, and the only thing that educators have power over, is how they operate in the system. The thing is, they don't know what they can take off their plate. They don't know. And so this is a book that says, you want to know how to do it? I want to tell you how to do it. These are the small steps that you can take little by little to get your life back outside of this profession so that you do have the energy reserves to show up and teach happy, but also feel happy outside of this profession as well.
Oh, I love it. So let's talk about some additional advice for our listeners, because, with the podcast, I want them to consume as much information as possible, but I don't want them to stop there. And I want them to do definitely the happiness habits that you've dropped on us today as far as those top 5, but I also want some advice for them to enhance their leadership journey. So for those who are listening, if they can do something tomorrow or next week to enhance their leadership journey, what would you recommend for them to do?
Oh my goodness. Well, here's what I think. I think that every day I walked out of the glass doors of the 4th grade hallway and I kind of walked out with my head down. I would kind of whip myself across the back. Like I would say, oh, you didn't handle this challenge very well. You got into a power struggle with this student. You completely balked on this history lesson because you were worn out and you just didn't want to do it. And I would just leave feeling defeated. And now as I look back, I think that maybe I did one or two things wrong that day, but I did 99 things right, Joshua. I did 99 things right. And so what I tell teachers is I want us to start giving ourselves a little bit of grace. I want us to now walk out those doors of the schools that we're leading. We are leading entire schools of teachers and paraprofessionals and custodians and secretaries and students. We are the ones who are forging the path so that they can be successful. And what I want them to do is to now walk out that door, and I had to do it as a curriculum director myself, and really put your shoulders back and say, you know what? I'm serving in one of the most noble, sacred professions out there. And I'm going to give myself a little grace because I'm doing a lot right. And my heart is in the right place. And I have to have some grace for being a human being.
Well, and it goes to what you were talking about before about those negative ideas that we have, and especially in educators. I mean, I think we are our own worst enemies sometimes as far as just speaking negative thoughts into our lives. And yes, you are 100% correct. Especially as administrators, we have thousands of decisions that we have every single day. Where as far as touch points too. I mean, we have thousands of children, parents, staff members. I mean, there's so many things that go on in a day. And I will admit to Kim that I was one to go out to my car and really pound myself as far as my thoughts during that reflection process of things that I should have done or could have done better. Yeah, I love what you're saying because I think that's spot on with a lot of our administrators and what they're feeling right now.
The research shows that 75% of teachers are reporting high levels of stress and difficulty with work-life balance. The stats for school leaders is 84%.
Yeah, I am not surprised. I love that you had the data to back that because I think a lot of our leaders need to hear that, identify it, and know that it's prevalent, and hopefully taking you up on not only your steps, but getting your resource, Teach Happy, Small Steps to Big Joy. If this is something that your staff needs, I know that Kim would probably have a book study of some sort that would be available to you. Kim, with that, if someone's listening and they want more information, maybe they want to bring you in for a keynote, how can they connect with you either via website or social media?
Yeah, my website is strobeleducation.com. And yeah, we're doing book orders. We actually have Teach Happy swag so that we
Nice.
can remind people this is what we're trying to embody here. And then, yeah, I'm actually doing keynotes. Following those is a book signing, which I love because as you know, Joshua, you can get up there, you can be on a stage for 75 minutes, but usually everybody has to fly out the door and go on to their next thing. And you don't really get a chance to connect with them. So one of my favorite parts is just like having a book signing and being able to hug these people and talk with them and hear their story and connect with them in that way.
Yeah, that's such a fun way to do it too. Just to meet them, shake their hand, give them a hug, tell them how much you appreciate them too. And for those who want to connect with Kim, of course, you can go to joshharper.com. We'll have all those links for you to connect. And then, of course, for YouTube, you can watch Kim anywhere, on YouTube as far as the Teach Better Team page or my own page. I'm here, Joshua Stamper, and make sure to push that subscribe button. And wow, Kim, you are just an amazing wealth of knowledge. I feel like I learned quite a bit today, not only with strategies, but then the research. And I could talk to you for, like I said, hours on this. This is a topic that I'm super just passionate about with, especially the trauma-informed piece and the brain. I'm constantly doing my own research to learn more to help educators. And I just am so thankful that I got to connect with you today and learn from you. So thank you so much for being on Aspire to Lead.
Thank you. It was my honor to be here and speak with you.